Somebody sent me this news article that was about these pastors who've turned atheists, but they keep preaching.
Well, poor quality aside, I think that's an interesting topic. Let's go ahead and roll the intro. Wait a minute. What's that sound? Oh. What's up, guys? Well, today we've got a video from the Faithful World Baptist Church, and it's an interesting one. I guess we're talking about pastors who are still preaching, yet are atheists. So let's go ahead and roll the rest of the video and see what this guy has to say.
And it's these Southern Baptists, and they didn't want to give their name, but this was an ABC news article that somebody said. This is a big news article. And it's these Southern Baptist preachers, and basically they've decided that they don't believe in God anymore, and they don't believe in the Bible anymore.
What a shocker. That never happens to people.
But because the economy's bad, they don't want to change jobs. So they're just going to continue preaching and continue pastoring the church.
I can completely understand that. Let's say you were in the faith for 40 or 50 years. You might not know anything else. You might have a family to support, and even if you don't agree with the particular ideas that are still being preached in your denomination, you may still have to deal with that and still support your family. It's like if you're an insurance agent that doesn't like the direction your company's gone, but you still need to make sure that you're paying the bills. Or a soldier who can't afford to retire even if they don't believe in the cause their country is fighting for anymore. Those are all legitimate reasons to continue doing something whether or not you agree with it. Sometimes self-preservation and the people who depend on us are more important than our own personal hardships.
You know, that's just kind of a weird article, but there was one thing in it that jumped out at me. And I want to read you this quote from this interview where they're interviewing these guys about the fact that basically they started out, they said, you know, they thought it was all real, but then the problem is, you know, they started studying it, and they started reading atheist materials, and it just made a lot of sense to them, and now they're just atheists. They believe that there is no God.
How do you find that weird? It's strange to me that you would find that awkward. As a pastor whose job it is to communicate a message, it would seem to me that your position would require you to research the material on both ends of the debate. As an atheist, I read my Bible now more than I did when I was a Christian, and I most certainly read other books that I wouldn't have even touched when I was a Christian, most notably the Quran, not even counting other atheist materials. I don't see how you can find something like that awkward. It seems like you honestly should take a good hard look at all possible evidence that is there. Most certainly if you're going to be speaking on one side of the debate.
And they actually believe that the Bible is just a fairy tale. And that's what they're saying. Now, obviously, the guys were never saved in the first place. And by the way, we run into Southern Baptists every day that aren't saved, so that shouldn't really shock you.
Wow, what a disingenuous straw man. The people you're referring to effectively are your peers, and I guarantee you that many of them legitimately believed in the Bible while they were a Christian. More importantly than that, I can guarantee you that they went through all the same motions you did to get saved. How could you possibly be so arrogant as to say that your peers, who are stuck in something that they no longer agree with, were never part of your side to begin with? Let me assure you, many of those people legitimately believed in the things that they read and legitimately believed in your God. It is dishonest and honestly a little gross that you would strawman them so badly.
Because a lot of these Southern Baptists, I've run into Southern Baptists who are saved, but a lot of Southern Baptists I've run into who are teaching like a lordship salvation, like a work salvation, lordship salvation. You know, I've run into independent Baptists that aren't saved. You know, not everybody who's a Baptist is necessarily just automatically saved, right? Just because you go to this church doesn't make you automatically saved. You better believe that salvation is by faith in Jesus Christ alone, not of works lest any man should boast.
Let me get one thing clear. There is absolutely nothing wrong for a person of faith to believe that they should do works on this earth to better the planet that we're on. I've personally had conversations with theists where we came to the agreement that even if they believe that this is a place to dust your feet and I believe this is the end of everything whenever I die here, we could at least agree that making this world a better place was still a worthwhile endeavor. Just because somebody believes that works are still important does not mean that they did not also have faith.
And that's what makes you saved, because of your faith in Christ Jesus, not the church that you attend or don't attend. But this guy, listen to, you got to hear this, because this explained a lot. When I read this, I said, oh, now I get it. Here's from the article. He and Jack, I'm quoting the article, he and Jack said that when speaking to parishioners, this is after they became atheists, okay, but they, you know, hey, the economy's tough, I got to keep preaching. And here's what they say, I have a seminary degree,
For those who don't know, there is this thing called the Clergy Project, where pastors and clergy members can get together and give each other a support network when they no longer have their faith. Members of the Clergy Project typically are stuck in their position and cannot leave and must stay in the church for one reason or another, usually having to do with financial issues. Many of these people don't have a choice, and it's honestly not a laughing matter, and the fact that you're presenting it as a laughing matter in front of your audience is honestly kind of disgusting. That would be like me looking at somebody who has a family and wants to provide for them and is having to make a terrible moral choice in order to keep their family alive and laughing at their situation. Typically, I don't throw around statements that would be derogatory towards an individual if I can help it, but from what I'm seeing from this guy, I can honestly say I really think he's a bit of a disgusting person. As somebody who is currently unemployed and having to make all of his money off of YouTube, listening to another individual belittle the hardships of somebody else who is struggling to keep a job they no longer agree with, it really hits home. And that problem is magnified by the fact that he's presenting this to an audience who are laughing at it.
It's the best job I can get. Okay. It says this: he and Jack said that when speaking to parishioners, they tried to stick to the sections of the Bible that they still believed in. The parts about being a good person. Both said that they would like to leave their jobs, though they can't afford to. I want to get out of the position I'm in as quickly as I can because I try to be a person of integrity and character, Adam said. With the economy the way it is, with my lack of marketable skills other than a seminary education, it's got me in a tough spot. So, notice what he said. He doesn't really believe in the Bible, right? He even says, I'm an atheist. I don't believe that God even exists. So what parts of the Bible does he focus on?
I would imagine he's focusing on the parts of the Bible that have passages like love thy neighbor as thyself, and generally the parts of the New Testament that say that you should be a better human being. I don't find anything wrong with that. I can still pick up the Bible today and find some nuggets of worth inside that book. It just so happens that in my eyes, the book is also filled with so many other terrible atrocities that it doesn't make a net positive. And it seems to me that these pastors that you're portraying probably agree with me on that, so they're focusing on the small nuggets of good information that are in there, and I could commend them for that. It's honestly better than trying to preach hatred and bigotry out of the book. Focusing on the good, as opposed to focusing on the parts of the Bible that could be translated as, say, homophobic, is most certainly a good way to try to shape people into better individuals.
Just the practical part, right? Just the relevant part. Just the part that's going to help us here today, right? He says, I'm just going to focus on the part about being a good person. Because, that's the part that we can all agree on. Well, you know what? I like to focus on the part that we can't all agree on. Because if we all agree anyway, then why even show up to church? Just to have somebody tell you what you already agree with?
Actually, yeah. There are a lot of people that go to a church in order to reinforce their already held beliefs. If a pastor says something that contradicts with their beliefs, typically one of three things will happen. Either A, they will disagree with it and ignore the preacher and probably leave the church. B, they will agree with what the preacher is saying because the preacher is a person of authority and is saying it. Or C, agree to disagree with the preacher and continue to sit there because they think there's a net positive in his message. In my personal experience, which is not representative of everything that could possibly come out of this particular scenario, I think people choose option B most often. It especially happened in my family where, to this day, I still can't mention Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in front of my grandma because her pastor told her it was of the devil. She took it hook, line, and sinker, and I've still been told now that I cannot speak of it, even though this happened 30 years ago.
No, you come to church to learn something new. You come to church to get a glimpse from God's Word of that which is eternal. Not to just talk about the temporal. Not to just I'm just going to focus on the parts that I still believe in. Well, you know what? I still believe in all of it, so I'm going to focus on the miracles of the Bible.
You believe in all of it, you say? Every single bit? Every possible thing that could come out of that book? Well then, I might need to keep my eye on you. There could be some really interesting conversations that come from that type of mindset.
I'm going to focus on God parting the Red Sea. I'm going to focus on Jesus Christ raising up a dead body from the dead.
Given that most scholars agree nowadays that the Exodus didn't happen, or at the very least there's no evidence of the Exodus happening, much less a Moses actually existing, and we've never found contemporary evidence of Jesus Christ being executed on a cross, much less an empty tomb that would suggest that he had left the tomb of his own volition, and those are the things that you're choosing to focus on, then it definitely doesn't surprise me that pastors are leaving your faith. If they accept everything that you just said on its own merit, then sure, I could accept it. I already did once upon a time. But if you start looking into other secular sources to see if there's any validity to those particular claims, you find nothing. You think that somebody who's preaching the Word of God and trying to focus on the good aspects of it to mold their congregation into better people is automatically an atheist. Well, if this is the type of straw man you're going to use, then I'll be honest. I would rather be an atheist than your particular brand of Christian. I would rather see people become better individuals on the whole than simply accept every claim in a book. Most of the theists that I associate myself with, I generally consider to be good people, and I don't think that they would agree with your particular line of logic either.
Hey, I'm going to focus on the part that's spiritual. I'm not just going to focus only on the here and now, the temporal of, love your neighbor, love one another, do good to people, get along with your wife, get along with your kids. And that's what a lot of churches today focus on only, and it just makes me wonder, are they an atheist too?
We could talk about heaven, but there's not really a lot about heaven in the Bible. And what is there leads to a lot of debate. Most of what we know about hell actually comes from later sources like the Apocalypse of Peter, but that would be really awkward, wouldn't it? Looking into these other sources should automatically turn people into an atheist, right?
Do they only believe in the here and now? Because that's all they want to talk about? No, let's talk about heaven. Amen. Let's talk about hell. Let's talk about the resurrection that's bodily of Jesus Christ, and not just a social gospel about being good to your neighbor. Hey, that's not all that we need. That's part of the message, but that's not the whole message today.
Personally, I find concepts like heaven and hell only really useful as carrot and stick mechanisms for molding your congregation into better people, which, oh by the way, based on what you're telling me, seems to be the goal of these other pastors. Even though they believe that the Bible is not the infallible, inerrant word of the Lord, they're still interested in trying to shape their people into better people. So if you want to talk about heaven and hell, which again to me seem like carrot and stick mechanisms, and they want to talk about love thy neighbor, it seems to me that you two are not working entirely at cross purposes. The difference is that you would like to include the parts of the Bible that are more contentious. I have no problem with contentious conversation, but again, it seems to me like you and these other pastors are at the very least sharing the goal of making the world that's here in the here and now a better place. It doesn't seem to me that these people are trying to lead others away from their faith. They're just trying to keep food on the table for their families. Your misrepresentation of them is honestly a little abhorrent, and even though they're not as interested in winning souls as you are, it seems to me that they're still working towards a goal I can at least agree with. You, on the other hand, would rather misrepresent almost every other church that's not yours and enforce tribalism. If anybody feels like I've misrepresented you, then they'll let me know in the comment section below. Trust me. But with that said, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please give it a like and subscribe. Share it around to your friends if you enjoyed it that much. Links to the Discord server and other methods of contacting me are below. And keep an eye out on the channel over the next few days, because I'm going to be releasing an announcement video about some things that are going to be happening soon. I didn't want to just kind of shove that information into the end of a video this time. But before we get into the patron slides, guys, as always, insert end of video tagline here.